Hello, everyone. I am at Mr. Arnold, and today my objective is to talk to you about the Pear Deck presentation tool that exists out there. Now, Pear Deck is really big on their puns, so I tried one today with you to go ahead and start. I've got this little pair, and then I've got a deck of cards, so I'm here to talk to you about Pear Deck. Get it? Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. You're welcome, by the way. Let's get into Pear Deck and what it is. It's kind of a lot of different types of presentations that have come together into this really amazing resource, and I wouldn't be giving you a tutorial if I didn't really like it. So here is where we would get started. There is a website, peardeck.com, that you could use as a launch point, and you can sign in with Google to get started. It's going to ask you, are you a teacher? Are you a student? And if you want to be able to create presentations in it, you're going to have to click on the teacher option. Once I get in as a teacher, it's going to give me a home screen. It's got some things on the left here. It's got some sessions. Anytime you run a Pear Deck or slide deck, some call it, they will remember and log each of those as a session with a timestamp, and then it'll have ways that you can either reopen them, rename them, or you can actually get some data out of them after you have done them. You've got information about your account, and then you've got some add-ons. Add-ons that I would suggest that you go ahead and enable and then decide if you want to keep later or not would be actually all of them. So I go ahead and I enable Google Classroom because I want to use it with my Google Classroom. The classroom climate is going to be an option that it gives at the start of every lesson. It can check for the mood of the students, and it can check for feedback at the end as well. Today I'm only concerned about the mood. And then there is a takeaways. At the end of a session, you can actually grab all of the results that you have collected and share those specifically with your students if you would like. So let's get into how you would get started as a teacher. If I'm a teacher and I want to create a new Pear Deck presentation, I would click on the Create a New Deck option over here. Now, there are basically three different ways that you could go about the creation of a file. One would be to just go ahead and start from scratch, and you can add slides and build your presentation that way. A second way would be to import a PowerPoint, a Google presentation, a PDF, or another Pear Deck that you've already created. So if I had a PowerPoint or Google Slides presentation and it had animations, when I import that, I'm going to lose the animations. But the beauty of it is it's going to be web-based, and it's going to give you some added functionality that didn't exist in the PowerPoint or Google Slides forms. So if I click on that import option, I have a Google Slides presentation that I will go ahead and upload, and it's in my recents, thankfully, and it's called Title Slide. You'll notice these little pairs. Those are actual Pear Deck presentations that are loaded into my Google Drive, and then I've got a Google Slides presentation. So they exist in your Google Drive, and you can actually launch them from Google Drive too, and I'll show you that a little bit later. So I'm going to click on my title slide presentation and select it. Then it is going to import all of the slides that it had into Pear Deck's actual interface. So here I am in Pear Deck's interface, and I am going to go ahead and begin. Now I can see on slide 1, this is what I as a teacher will see. Over here is a preview window that's going to show what my students are going to see. Now I can add other slides in, and I can reorder them however I wish, but there are some added bonuses over here. When I click in this area, I can actually have some other types of slides that I wouldn't normally get to have with a PowerPoint or presentations or PDF or some of those. So one would be a draggable slide. So in this draggable slide, I can ask a question, how are you feeling today? And this one probably wouldn't be one that I would actually ask, because with the mood question, I would already have this on there. But just to show you how that could be made, I can click on a canvas that will go onto the preview screen of the students. And then they can drag either a dot, they can drag any of these math symbols, they can drag numbers or these little characters of icons, and then even some punctuation items that you can use. You can choose any image as a canvas in the background. You can have graph paper that then the kids would have to graph on, and I'll show you what that will look like. You can have more than one draggable item too. You can actually have up to 5. You can change the colors of them. You can change the icon like we said. And you can have up to 5 like I mentioned before. So there's my maximum draggables. So I've got 5 different ones there. I can make that a star or whatever the options are within there. Now that I have those in there, in this particular question, it probably only makes sense to have just one with it. But if I wanted to put in different numbers for a math style draggable question or different symbols of punctuation for an English type of question, I could do that. So I'm just going to leave it the 1 for now, since that makes more sense. I'm going to add a second slide. This style of question is going to be a freehand drawing. So for a freehand drawing question, I could ask them to draw a picture of Mr. Arnott. And this one, I'm just going to leave a blank canvas because it's not going to be as exciting. I'll add another slide for a multiple choice type of question. So I could predetermine that I want an actual quiz style question. So I could ask, what's your favorite color? And your answer choices for a multiple choice type of question are going to have to go over here on the right hand side. So I can type orange and red and blue, and I can add a couple of other items. I think there is a maximum threshold though. So orange, red, blue, green, and yellow. And it lets me keep going. So you have quite a bit of choices. And I don't actually know what the maximum threshold is, but it gives you quite a few options. So I'm just going to leave it at the 10 that I did and move on. So I'm going to add another slide. Now it's important to mention when you make multiple choice questions with this presentation tool, it's really solely a presentation tool in its truest form. Now it doesn't have an option for me to pick the correct answer and have it grade a response back to students. Now there is a way that you can do that. It's a little bit convoluted, and I'll show you how you could turn Pear Deck into a quiz type of tool if you wanted to house and grade the responses that were given to your kiddos. I really think it's more for your actual pedagogy. When you're going through a lesson, it makes sense to use Pear Deck. If you want to do an assessment, I might be more likely to use a Google form or maybe some other way to collect and grade those responses. But for presenting, you'll see how powerful it is here in just a second. So you have other choices in here. There's a free response text. So when I ask a question, what's your name? There is what it would look like on the student screen. I could then have the students either respond with a short text, so it gives them a small box, or I could have them respond with the paragraph text where it gives them a larger box on their screen to go ahead and put in answers. We're winding down on the actual types of questions. Oops. There's, besides free response text, there's a free response number, and there's website slides or normal slides. So here's the number one. And when you're doing the number, it's just going to ask you for a smaller box response. So if I ask what's 2 plus 2. And then that would be what would appear on the student screen. I'm going to add another slide. This type of slide is going to be a website slide. And if you want to have the presenter putting on some kind of video like YouTube, you could. So if I wanted to say, let's watch this video together, I can click on add YouTube video and it's going to ask me to enter in a YouTube URL. That's not a YouTube URL, so that's not going to work. So let me find one of those really quick. This is one on state assessments that I'm fond of, so I'm going to paste in that one. And now you'll notice over here in the student preview, they don't actually see anything there. This would just show up on our screen. So if you wanted this video to be watched by individual students at their own pace, you could do that. The way that would occur is you're going to have to go to add slide, and then we're going to be in a website style slide, and you need a specific URL here, and this gets a little bit tricky. So when you are on a specific YouTube video, and I'm going to pause it so you don't hear it right now, there is a share option on every one of them, and there is an embed code for any YouTube video, and it has all this iframe stuff in the middle of it. If you go in and you grab just the H over to the M, just what's in the quotes here, that's actually the part that you need for the students to see it on theirs. So when I go over here and I click paste, you'll notice on my screen, I can say, tell me your thoughts, or write your thoughts on a piece of paper or whatever. About this video. You'll notice on their screen, they're going to see the actual website. On my screen, I just am going to be displaying on the projector, or the projected image, tell me your thoughts about this video. So stay with me. I know that is a little bit tricky. There's a couple other things you can do when you're creating. Now, this may be overwhelming, and I get that. There are other ways for you to kind of stick your foot in the water for using Pear Deck. One of those ways is to use the Pear Orchard. So if I were to go to peardeck.com/orchard, this is going to be a culmination of a lot of different decks that are around that teachers have created, or that Pear Deck has created for you to browse and kind of start. So if I were a math teacher and I typed equations, I can look for some grade level specific Pear Decks that exist, or I can just kind of look around, see what I find. Here's a 16 slide one, here's a 9 slide one that goes over equations, so that I would have something to begin with. So I'll grab my Graphing and Evergreen tree just because that looks kind of interesting to me. And you've got a Save to Favorites button. So if I click Save to Favorites, then I can either copy it to my Google Drive right there, or I can just add it within where Pear Deck keeps all of my presentations. Okay, so I've got this presentation, and we've gone through ways to create and ways to open Pear Deck, but now it is time to party. So I want to actually give a presentation to my students, and I can do that one of a couple ways. One way is to click on the Start Presenting. And when I click on Start Presenting, it gives me an option over here that says, okay, can you see it on the projector? Yes, I can. Now I could display this on my screen, and I could have my students go to peardeck.com/join and then enter in this code. That is one way to have them go. Now I'm going to end this session. And I'm going to end it without naming it because I didn't actually do it. A second way to get students into actually your presentation would be to go back to the home screen. And when I click on my now untitled deck that I just did, I have a Start Presenting option. There is a way for you to integrate Google Classroom. And that's going to be over here in another tool that the teachers can use called the dashboard. The dashboard, when you enable it, this could be on either your phone or an iPad, is going to show you some options that you, as the driver of the presentation, can be using. Now, here is my presentation over here on the left that I can scroll through for my students to view. Then I can also see who's joined my actual presentation. Nobody's joined it yet, but I can invite my Google Classroom class from this dashboard. So when it does that, it's going to ask you, okay, you're a Google Classroom teacher. Which class is it that you want to actually demo this presentation with? So I can click on the presentation, the class that I want to invite. So I'm going to invite this particular class that has 2 students. Now, my students, when they go to Pear Deck, are going to see something different when they go to peardeck.com/join now. Here's a student that's in that class, and you'll notice instead of, they could still put the join code if they want, or they can just click this button that says join now. So this is the student in my Google Classroom class that is beginning. And because I had that mood question, they get this question first. How are you feeling today? I'm feeling ecstatic. So your teacher will begin shortly, and I will even keep this up just a little bit so that you can see in a little bit what the students will be seeing on their screen, which also appears on my screen as well, depending if you're in the dashboard or not. So we're ready to present after my other student joins, which is over here on my other computer. So I'm going to have him join as well, and he's going to be feeling great as well. Now I can go as a teacher and move on with my presentation. My students are seeing this, and then I have the dashboard view over here as well. My goal is to make this a little bit smaller, so bear with me for just a second. There's my dashboard view, and here is my actual presentation machine that actually the kids are seeing. And then I've got my student. That's actually my student and actually what they're seeing. So over here in the dashboard, I have got the other tools that are down here, and it's a little bit tough to see. So my goal is to adjust this so that you can. Okay, so now I have what the dashboard would look like as a teacher viewing, and now I have what the students are seeing with my presentation as it's beginning. So when you get into the presentation mode, you've got some navigational tools. When I click those tools, you'll notice there's the how are you feeling today, and the students are going to see the next question that was up. And I changed that to a graph, which I shouldn't have done earlier. So sorry about that. Next, we have draw a picture of Mr. Arnold. So on their screen, they have these tools, and they can draw a picture of Mr. Arnold with stick lines, or they can use a freehand drawing. And so I see on my dashboard what that student is drawing, and I have another student that's over here who's a little bit more artistic, who happens to share my same last name. So if I scroll down, you can see there's one and there's another response. On the actual presentation that the students would see, I've got this draw picture of Mr. Arno, and then I can change that so that I can project student responses. So now I can project to them, oh, there's the responses of my class. It doesn't show their names, you'll notice, because I may not want that. I want to protect their anonymity when I'm presenting what they're displaying. Over here on my dashboard, I will know, okay, this person and Hunter drew this particular drawing. Okay, so there is that. Here is an example of the multiple choice question. So that student would then choose a response. Once they choose a response on our screen, it goes up with the responses that were chosen by your students, and this is in real time. Now there are two different views. There is an overlay layout and there's a grid layout. So I can see those responses a couple of different ways. I can do the same with this view, this grid view, where I see all of them versus a list layout that goes through each of them. And that's important on the draggable questions here in a little bit. So what's your name? Then the student types Bob, and my other student, Hunter, put in their name. There is no bad word filter, so be aware that that could creep up as you're doing one of these. So our numeric response question, here's a student that writes 4, here's a student that goofed and put a wrong question. So there's the grid view. Here is the list view to see what my students were actually putting. So I could follow that up now that I know that maybe some reteaching is necessary in the middle of my lesson, and I can actually ask a new question in the middle of this presentation. I could re-ask the same question, so it puts the same exact question in again, and then it still holds the responses from the previous one. Or I could do a new interactive question with any of those question types that existed that we went over before. So that is kind of powerful and pretty cool in my opinion. So I'm still on the dashboard slide right now. This tab is what's being presented to the students. I can move on. Let's watch this video together. You'll notice that they see something on there, but when I play the video over on this side, it's not going to be presented over here on the student's screen as they see that. On the next slide that we created, the tell me your thoughts about this video, that was where I went in and I adjusted the iframe of that link to only grab the portion that needs to go into the actual Pear Deck slide. So on their screen now, they see the actual video that I wanted them to watch, and they can watch it at their own pace, assuming they have headphones, so it wouldn't drive you nuts as a teacher. So that would be those styles, and then these were just the ones that I'd already created that we could talk about. So we went through each of these websites. I just thought that those were important to maybe kind of re-mention. When you are finished presenting to your audience, you have the option to go over here and end the session. So when you end the session, it wants to ask, okay, what was the name of the session? This would have been maybe my first hour class 419. Oh. And there's a publish student takeaways option. This is going to take all of the information that you collected from the presentation and put it on your actual presentation. So sharing takeaways, you've got two ways to actually share them. One is to give this link to your students, and it's going to have a Google Doc with all of the information that you've collected. Or there's a way that you can share it to Google Classroom. If I click Share to Google Classroom, sometimes it takes a little bit depending on how much stuff you had going on in your presentation. And it wants to know, okay, which classroom do you want to share that information out with? Maybe I want to share it with another class or the same class. So under Choose Action, I can make an announcement or create an assignment based off of these results and say, specifically, here is our Pear Deck takeaway. It says download your Pear Deck today. I can create a topic or not, but that's what I called it, and I'm okay with that. I can schedule the post or save it just like I could in Google Classroom with anything else. So I have posted this to my class, and when I click on View, it takes me to, I'm in my teacher Google Classroom class, and it shows me that I actually made that post. Now over here, as my student, if I go into their Google Classroom class and I go to their stream, it says I don't have any post. Is that because I did the wrong class? Because this student actually have, oh, let's hit show. And it just needed to download. I was just too slow, sorry. Here is our takeaway. So now that student now is going to see the takeaway. Now, since I did this live, it sometimes does take just a little bit. In fact, they say that it could take up to an hour for them to get that takeaway. And that's not always the case in my experience, but when it's finished, and now it's already done, even the time that I've talked to you, here is a Google Doc that shows all the summaries of each of our students. So this student only had the picture of that they had created, so it only shows their response, but it shows every question and then every response that that particular student did. On the favorite color, this student chose red. On what's your name, this student chose Bob, and what's 2 + 2, 4, etc. So kind of cool that it can harness all of that data. So in addition to those takeaways that it can create, if I go back into Pear Deck's homepage, I'm going to return home. And under the Home tab, there are the sessions that you can go back to. This was the session that I just did today. I could go in here and I can export all of the results as a takeaway. That's the Google Doc, or I can export all the information into a spreadsheet. If you export that information into a spreadsheet, you'll see all of the responses. Now, there's the numeric responses and how are you feeling today. So if you wanted to turn this into a gradable activity, what you would need to do is you would have to go into your add-ons and you'd have to use something like Flubaroo, because Flubaroo can take anything on a spreadsheet and then turn it into a gradable artifact. So you would have to follow the instructions of Flubaroo, and using Flubaroo is kind of a whole other tutorial, but I'm going to try to just quickly do that. I clicked on instructions, which I didn't mean to do. Over here are some updates, and I don't care about those announcements right now. I just want Flubaroo to run, so I'm going to try it one more time. So under Flubaroo, I have a grade assignment option. And it wants to know, out of these, which do I want to be worth points? So most of these are identifiers. How are you feeling today? I don't really want them to grade unless I want them to always be happy in my class. But the how are you feeling today, I'm going to get rid of that one too. That one wasn't one that really made sense. Drawing a picture, that's really kind of hard to grade, so I would skip that. What's your favorite color? Although it's an opinion, I could go ahead and grade it, and it could be worth 1 point or up to 10 points. The what's your name, I'm going to skip. and what's 2 plus 2 would be a gradable question. So when I hit continue, it wants to know, okay, those are the questions that you have. Who of these folks should be the answer key? Now, I would need to go ahead and put in some responses of my own and then select myself to be the person that is the answer key, or I could choose, if there was a student that I know got all the right answers, I could click them, and based off their responses, it would grade the other students in my list. And then on one tab, I have the student submissions, and then you would get a gradable option over here in the second tab that would show, okay, if Hunter's was the answer key, which I know I should have had mine instead, but this is going to be a 0% because their answers did not match the answer key, and it gives you just results of your whole entire class there. So that's how you could use the results of Pear Deck to turn it into something that was gradable. Like I said, that's not necessarily what I would suggest. There are way other cooler presentations than the really basic one that I showed. If I go into an example Pear Deck that I created, or this Engaging Students 3, I think is even better. If I go into the editing of it, you'll see kind of some better examples of some of the slides that you could create. So here I have, let's check out Pear Deck. Not very exciting there, but you can respond to some quotes. You can have a different kind of canvas on the how are you feeling today. You could drag pins, if I'm a social studies teacher, to specific spots on a map. You could use triangles to border different maps. I think there's a lot of map opportunities for you as a social studies teacher. You can ask you can incorporate just a picture on a slide. That was one I just grabbed from the internet. Or you can actually doctor up other pictures. So circle 3 things that stand out to you about this ballot. They could circle things on a screen. That's type of question. Then I've got a couple others that exist, maybe drawing on symbols, moving a dot around on diagrams would be one way that you could use and do questions. You've got other videos that you can do, and we already went over those examples, so I'm trying to skip over those. Write out and punctuate this quote. This is one where they would have to drag commas and periods and left quote, right quote, exclamation point to finish this maybe daily oral language type of lesson. So lots and lots of opportunities. I appreciate you guys staying with me through this tutorial. I know it was long, but it's because Pear Deck is a really robust software. It is one that I'm very excited about, and I hope you take advantage of. And once again, if you have questions, just let me know. I'm at Mr. Arnold on Twitter, and I am in the Independent School District, if you guys know me there, and can always email me there. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.